Everyone, thank you for joining us in this session of Spokane Public Schools Keep Learning Series for Literacy. Today's lesson is for all our fifth graders out there, and any child who's interested is welcome to join us. My name is Mrs. Rich, and I'm a fifth grade teacher at Woodridge Elementary in Spokane Schools. I will be your teacher for this lesson. I'm so glad you are participating with me today. This is our second lesson in this series. If you didn't see our previous lesson, you can find it on the KSPS website. You can still tune into today's lesson if you haven't seen any of our others. Today, we'll be learning how to integrate information from multiple sources. We'll be using text evidence to support our thinking. For today's lesson, you will need pencil and paper. I'll give you a moment to gather your supplies. All right, lesson 2 is called How Did We Get Here? Our focus is integrating information from multiple sources for this lesson. Now, I'm really excited because we are heading back to the beach today, friends. In this lesson, we'll look at why we read multiple sources. We'll review portions of the articles. We'll look at our essential question and then do an activity together. And then you'll have an independent activity for practice time. So you might have a question on what integrating information is about. That means what important details were in one source, but not in the other. So that begs the question, why do we even read multiple sources? It provides multiple viewpoints on a topic. So sometimes we have a certain way of thinking, and when we read from somebody else's point of view and we have conflicting points of view, it makes us think a little bit harder and perhaps makes us change our mind or come to realization that there's new information out there. It also helps us analyze information more accurately. If you're only getting it from one source, you're only hearing what that person thought was important. Or if you're looking at multiple sources, we're going to look at, like we're looking at today, how using different ideas combined together can provide richer answers. And then it allows us to formulate our own conclusions or ideas using evidence from each source. And because you're provided more information, you'll have a better idea of how to come to that conclusion. So keeping in mind using these multiple sources, here's our essential question for today. What critical information regarding how the Great Garbage Patch came about was present in one source, but not the other? Okay, so we're looking at how this garbage patch actually formed today. That's what our focus is. We are ready to get going. So we're going to start with our first article, the ReadWorks, What a Dump. Remember, we're focusing on how did that great garbage patch come about? How do we get rid of so much plastic? The plastic predicament. Try to get through a day without using plastic. For that matter, try to go just 1 hour without it. From food and drink packages to cell phones and toothbrushes, plastic is nearly impossible to avoid. You can't even turn on a light without flicking a plastic switch. Now, we can already look at the heading here, the plastic predicament. This is telling us how the issue came about. So we really want to focus on those headings today so we can narrow down where we're going to look for our answer for our essential question. Plastic doesn't exist in nature. It's created from chemicals. Mass production of plastic started in the 1940s. Since then, it has become supremely popular, and for good reason. Plastic is lightweight, cheap, and convenient. It also lasts for a very long time. That can be good. You don't want your laptop to fall apart as you type, but it can be bad too. Plastic can remain in the environment for hundreds or even thousands of years. It piles up, filling garbage dumps and polluting the land and the ocean. Each year, more than 300 million tons of new plastic are manufactured worldwide. Clearly, we have a plastic problem. Trash soup. Natural products such as food, paper, and wood are biodegradable. They're broken down by bacteria and are absorbed by the environment. Plastic, on the other hand, is photodegradable. Light, and remember this photo, that means light, from the sun causes it to break into smaller pieces over time. It never degrades or goes away completely. However, it often winds up in littering the land and the ocean. In the Pacific Ocean, plastic waste has collected in a swirling soup of trash called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It's huge, 4 times as big as Texas. It's just one example of ocean garbage patch. Plastic pollutes all the world sees. The United Nations Environment Program estimates that plastic kills 100,000 marine mammals and turtles and 1 million seabirds every year. Some become tangled in plastic debris while others die after eating plastic trash they can't digest. Scientists estimate that 80% of the ocean's plastic started out on land. Now the good news. You can help by tossing plastic into the recycling bin instead of the trash. A measly 28% of plastic bottles were recycled in 2009, according to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. You can help drive those numbers up. And then here again is our diagram. We have the 2 different parts. Remember, each of these is twice the size of Texas. Sea of trash. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is 2 areas of floating garbage in the Pacific Ocean. Each one is twice the size of the state of Texas. They lie within the North Pacific subtropical gyre, a ring of currents that turns clockwise in the ocean. Still, recycling won't solve our plastic predicament. Not all types of plastic can be recycled, and those that can may not be recycled in the way you'd expect. Plastic water bottles and soft drink bottles, some of the most commonly used plastics in the United States, are hardly ever turned into new bottles. Instead, they're recycled into carpet, furniture, and fleece clothing. With those products wear out, they often can't be recycled a second time. So what can you do? One of the best ways to tackle the problem is to reduce the amount of plastic you use. Carry reusable water containers instead of single-use plastic bottles. Bring your lunch in recyclable aluminum foil instead of a plastic sandwich bag. Ask your family to carry reusable totes to the grocery store. Every little bit helps. And now you can even take those plastic bags back to the grocery store. Some of them will even recycle them there for you. So if you don't have your reusable bags, then you can take back the plastic ones they give you. Plastic will probably always be a part of our lives, but by making smart choices, we can keep it from burying us. So did you see anything on there about how the actual patch got started? Hopefully you noted a few points. Let's take a quick pause and then we'll jump into our other article. So we're ready to begin our second source. And so it's the National Geographic website called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. We are going to come up and take a look at some of these pictures again, because those might help us for getting additional answers. But we're going to start with the text first and then return to the other. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is a huge area of marine debris. Marine debris is garbage in the ocean. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is the world's biggest area of marine debris. It is in the North Pacific Ocean. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch stretches from the west coast of North America to Japan. It is made up of 2 parts. One is the Western Garbage Patch near Japan. The other is the Eastern Garbage Patch between Hawaii and California. Strong currents carry marine debris into the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Once there, the trash builds up over time. Plastics are the biggest problem. They do not wear down completely. They only break into smaller and smaller pieces. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is mostly tiny bits of plastic. These small pieces are called microplastics. They can't always be seen. Often, they just make the water look like a cloudy soup. Larger things like fishing nets or shoes are mixed into the soup. And if you remember last time, if you were able to join us, there was the picture above that showed how they're teeny tiny little circular bits of plastic as they break down. And so it confuses the birds because they think it's food. It doesn't get any better beneath the surface of the water. The seafloor under the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is an underwater garbage heap. Over time, most marine debris sinks to the bottom. You can probably understand how that happens. That garbage piles on, and then it gets water in it, and it gets other things collected like in the nets, and that just keeps pulling down and down with the weight, which then enlarges the amount of space that garbage is really taking up, which is going to affect the animals. Marine debris litters the ocean. Now, I think we might be able to pay attention here for some answers. No one knows for sure how much debris is in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Most of it comes from cities and towns in North America and Asia. The rest come from ships. Plastics are the most common kind of marine debris. Most of this debris comes from plastic bags, bottle caps, plastic water bottles, and styrofoam cups. The sun breaks these plastics into smaller and smaller pieces. Even if they can't be seen, they are still there. Marine debris can be very harmful to marine life. For example, turtles often mistake plastic bags for jellies, their favorite food. Albatrosses mistake plastic pellets for fish eggs. Then they feed the pellets to their chicks. Often, those chicks then die. Seals are also in danger. They can get tangled in plastic fishing nets. Seals often drown in these nets. Marine debris is affecting the entire food chain. For example, algae are underwater plants. Plankton are tiny critters that eat algae to survive. Plankton get eaten by other animals, like whales. But microplastics stop the sunlight from reaching underwater algae. Without sunlight, the algae won't grow and spread. Without algae, plankton won't have enough food. And without plankton, whales won't have any food either. And so some people think, well, what's the big deal? Like, these plastics come and it makes kind of a soupy thing, but the animals swim way underneath. But if that sunlight doesn't come, the algae doesn't form, which means the little plankton can't get food. And then large animals like whales eat that plankton. So one thing is affected and the whole food chain becomes off. Plastics also contain harmful pollutants. These dangerous chemicals are poisoning the water. They are also making fish and marine mammals, such as whales and seals, very sick. What to do about the patch? Cleaning up marine debris is not easy. Many microplastics are the same size as small sea animals. Nets that can scoop up garbage could catch these animals too. In any case, the ocean is just too big to clean. Scientists say it would take 1 year for 67 ships to clean up just a tiny part of the North Pacific Ocean. They say the best answer is to stop throwing away so much plastic. So what are we supposed to do with our plastic? We need to recycle it. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is a soupy collection of marine debris, mostly plastics, and then that's just our photo that shows. Now we're ready to take a look at the photos that show us some additional things about this article. So Pacific Garbage Patch can devastate marine life in the North Pacific subtropical gyre. The stomach contents of this unfortunate albatross include plastic marine debris fed to the chick by its parents. And you can see all the things that it's eaten once it's died, and you think, gosh, how harmful is that to that bird? And then we have a poor turtle that's got caught in those fishing nets. And so you can see they swim into it. And once that happens, they get all tangled in it. And then they can't get their food and they can't travel on. And all this extra weight kind of holds them back and they end up dying. We have a couple divers here that are trying to help the seal. So this is what they call ghost fishing. So the seal's just swimming along and he swims into this pile of garbage and he gets tangled in these nets. They call it ghost fishing because nobody is really fishing, but it ends up killing the animals inadvertently because, again, they can't get free. It weighs them down. They can't go up above the surface, and they certainly can't get food. This particular picture is showing us all the different places where garbage patches are in our bodies of water all over the world. So if you're interested, you could do more research and see what other bodies of water have garbage-wise and what other countries are doing about it. So now that we've read our information, ready to head back and do our activity together. Alrighty, once again, let's take a look at our essential question. What critical information regarding how the Great Pacific Garbage Patch came about was present in one source, but not the other? So we're going to take a look at what a dump first. Light from the sun causes plastic to break down, but never completely. It winds up littering the land and the ocean. Plastic waste is gathered in a swirling soup of trash that is 4 times the size of Texas. So do we find very much from what a dump? No, not a whole lot. So I'm hoping that we get more from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And then we'll talk about, well, how do I take that information and actually turn it into an answer? Here's what I pulled from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Strong ocean currents carry marine debris into the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Once there, the trash builds up over time. Plastics are the biggest problem. They don't wear down. Again, kind of like what a dump said, that nothing ever goes away completely. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is mostly tiny bits of plastic. These are called microplastics. They cannot always be seen. Often they just make the water look like cloudy soup. Larger things like fishing nets or shoes are mixed into the soup. It doesn't get any better beneath the surface of the water. The seafloor under the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is an underwater garbage heap. Over time, most marine debris sinks to the bottom. Most of it comes from cities and towns in North America and Asia. The rest come from ships. You can see that we have a lot more evidence in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch than we do in What a Dump. The next step is, what do we do with that information now? Okay, so how do we put this all together? There was critical information provided in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and we quote these because it's an article, that was not presented in What a Dump. So again, if it's a website or an article, you put quotation marks and you don't underline. Okay, so here's our answer. In the Garbage Patch article, it showed us waste was coming from towns in North America and Asia, as well as from ships. The garbage is made up of tiny microplastics that make the water cloudy. It also includes water bottles, shoes, plastic nets, etc. Eventually, those items sink to the ocean floor and cause the patch to grow in depth. So the only thing that we include in the answer are things that were in one source, not both. And in just the Garbage Patch websites, it talked about the ships, it talked about the microplastics, and it gave us specific examples of the what the garbage was and how it helps it grow in depth. Okay, so now that we've done this together, it's going to be your turn. I hope you got a lot from our lesson today. Now it's going to be your turn to give it a go. Your independent activity. Your turn to answer a new essential question. What critical information regarding how we can stop the Great Pacific Garbage Patch from growing was present in one source but not in the other? Okay? How do we stop this? We know it's a big problem. We want to know what is the best way to make sure that future generations don't have this as a growing problem. You're going to compare the two texts, find which article has important information that is only present in one source. Write a paragraph explaining what you found in that one source that you thought was critical to answering the essential question. Remember, if it's in both sources, we leave that out because we knew that from both places. It's only the extra information that we needed that came from just one source. Thanks again for learning with me today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.